Stephen was born. Stephen ran into a devil, which he promptly took care of. It was for nothing. Stephen was slain. He said his name was Stephen Jr. He finally got a striking blow, crippling the monolith forever. Poncho quickly killed Stephen Jr., eliminating him from this world forever. But Poncho was confused. What now? The world seemed to be okay. Everything was fine until the bombs began falling. Poncho was almost immediately slain, and over time, the world began to heal itself. The world began to glow green once again. The sheltered empire opened their doors. As the city folk realized that Stephen did not abandon them, but saved them, they made a monument, a cross in the middle, with a summit on top, to commemorate Stephen Jr., the hero that they did not deserve, but the hero that they needed. Many years after the brave sacrifice of Stephen Jr. and his posse, we find the world in a state of utter prosperity. The sheltered empire, now renamed to the Free Empire, has expanded its reign uncontested across the entire world. The infernal hellscape that Stephen Jr. and his posse once tread, now completely covered in green scenery. There was peace, there was no war, there was only one empire to rule it all. Cities had even been named after Stephen and his crew for his sacrifice to the world. The ancient demon kingdom that had once terrorized the land had now been reclaimed by the humans itself, as the old castle lay in utter ruin. However, despite the supposed prosperity and safety of this kingdom, without a powerful being, without a powerful deity like Stephen to protect over it, it was at risk, and it was doomed to fall quickly. Inside of a large, familiar castle loomed a terrorizing young demon. This demon went by the name of Roncho. He was the son of Poncho, killed by Stephen Jr., and the grandson of Honcho, who was killed by Stephen I. Roncho would soon be released into the world, and without a deity to protect the humans, they would surely fall quickly. The only thing stopping Roncho from the rest of the world was the small mountainous box that he was trapped in, along with the mysterious evil walls that protected Poncho's old home from the rest of the civilized world. However, eventually, disaster struck, with most claiming it was done by fate alone. A meteor would crash down onto Honcho's box, allowing him to run freely among the castle. However, he still had the issue of the wall to deal with, but this wouldn't be much of an issue for him, because now that Roncho had just a little bit of space to work with, he could begin summoning the Horde. Roncho used his powers to cast several earthquakes around the world, which not only removed some of the evil walls, but also made a gaping hole in the ground, allowing for hell itself to rise up. And hell was most certainly raised, as countless amounts of demon towers opened up, summoning demons across the world to go on an attack. The humans truly tried their best to defend. The first village of Stephen had to deal with the initial wrath of Roncho, simply stood no chance. Much like before, hell began crossing over the land. Cities began crumbling, and Roncho was among the first to help destroy the world. The entire village of Stevens was set ablaze, destroying it nearly immediately. Demons had already moved into the nearby cities too, causing chaos and destruction. However, due to slow postal technology, the queen of the Free Empire, Steva, still had no clue what was going on in the rest of the world, but she would soon find out. As time passed, more and more demons were unleashed into the world, causing even more of a fierce hell blaze, and by this point, word had gotten back to Steva, and she knew what she must do. She had to assemble a team, just like last time, except this time, there was no Stephen, but with the fiery blaze of hell sweeping across the landscape, similar to that of a dust storm or a blizzard, action had to be taken quickly. After not a second wasted searching, 5 diligent members were chosen for the quest to hopefully take down Roncho once and for all. The first of the group was a middle-aged man named Matita. Matita can be considered something of a tank. He was strong, he was tough, he had a boosted vitality, and he could regenerate. And in battle, he wielded a trusty steel hammer. Next up is a middle-aged woman named Trevor. Yes, it was a woman named Trevor. And Trevor was a genius. However, she was still very weak, and she was eagle-eyed, making her very powerful with her trusty iron bow. Next up is a slightly younger woman named Xenical. Xenical was a very diligent and quick soldier who was tiny, yet very agile and fast. She wielded a silver spear and had a full set of iron armor. Next up is a much younger woman named Turtle. And Turtle was considered to be a solid all-around soldier. She was tough, she was agile, she had more health, and she had an insatiable bloodlust. She was also considered fairly lucky. But overall, she wasn't overly good at any one skill, which made her deadly with a adamantium sword, an adamantium chestplate, and iron boots. And lastly, but not least, is Oblivion. Much like Matita, Oblivion was a giant who was powerful, but also agile. Many considered her to be a savage. However, no one really knew her that well, as she was mute and refused to even try to communicate with anyone else ever. Regardless, this group of people would have to work together to hopefully not just stop the demons in their approaching hellstorm, but Roncho himself. On our journey, our heroes would quickly meet with demons, who they were able to disperse relatively quickly. And at this point, our group had struggled to just deal with these normal demons alone, and they realized that they would not be able to fight through the demon horde to get to Roncho, and they would have to find some other way. But then they found where Roncho was. He was by the mostly destroyed city of Stee, and one advantage of Stee is that it was next to an ocean, and if there's one thing that demons hated, it was the water. The people knew this, but yet they were almost unable to utilize it to any extent, as they really didn't know what they could do with it. There's no way that they would be able to destroy all of the demons with it, but regardless, our posse began heading south. They moved southeast from Krail to the city of Rackroll, where they would hopefully be able to get into the ocean before the demon horde got there. Eventually, they had reached the coastline, and they were planning on taking a boat over. Eventually, our group would convince a boat owner to take them and a few other soldiers sympathetic to their cause to hopefully take down Roncho once and for all. And when they landed, they saw him just north, across a destroyed farm windmill. They saw the one who would cause all of this destruction across the land in just a matter of months. They were finally going to have their revenge and reclaim the world. They began fighting quickly, but as we can see in the top left, it was relatively for no cause. Roncho quickly dispersed our entire posse, and he showed no signs of emotion as he was apathetic towards the entire thing. It wasn't long before this news spread all the way back to Queen Stiva, who learned that the group not only wasn't able to defeat Roncho, but they stood no chance against him either. Our heroes, who we thought so highly of, were perished in a matter of seconds. Stiva, being over 300 years old, was alive during the time period of Stephen Jr. and when the first hellscape reigned over the land. She knew that without the resources to take down any of these demons, let alone Poncho, that she was going to have to make an evacuation call. A call that would require all remaining citizens to come into the castle, or else it would seem that most likely they would be destroyed once and for all. The queen made it urgent that this message got across the land as soon as possible before the gates closed, and spread it did. Several hundred people were able to make it into the gate walls before they were sealed, just like in the days prior to Stephen Jr. For extra protection, they were double sealed, with an extra wall on the front and in the back too. Any people remaining inside of these extra villages felt betrayed by their government as they quickly succumbed to the oncoming demon invasion. In a matter of years, it looked like the world would return to what it once was. Hellscape was growing across the land, and all villages outside of it had been destroyed, with the houses laying in ruins. But now the humans, led by Queen Stiva, had to devise a plan to hopefully take down Roncho once and for all. And they did so from the perceived safety of their castle, which, just like in the days of Poncho, it had seemed impenetrable, which most people believed it was. However, Roncho was not like his father Poncho or his grandfather Poncho. He was more powerful than both of them combined, and he was going to get into the castle one way or another. He ordered his demon minions to begin banging on the gates with everything that they had to tear down the walls and infiltrate the castle. Well, eventually, it began to work. The gates began loosening, and they began getting more and more inside. Poncho and the demons pushed into the iron walls, which they were able to quickly disperse of too. The last line of defense was one more summit peak, which would also fall quickly. The demons, the first time ever, now had full access into the castle and could finally destroy the humans once and for all. Without hesitation, the demons quickly began infiltrating the castle. The fights at the gate were ferocious, with all remaining humans fighting not just for their lives, but for the lives of their children, their grandchildren, and their entire genealogy, but it seemed like it was in vain. Within seconds, the world population was down to just half of what it was seconds before the demons had infiltrated. Their fire could be seen across the world. Even Steva of the Free Empire was killed. In a last-ditch effort, all remaining citizens turned to Bobology and his deity of Stephen, praying and hoping that one day he could come back and save them all. A large ritual was held around the grave of Stephen Jr., where he and his posse were buried, in hopes to summon him or anything back into this world to save them. And despite their beliefs, nothing would happen. As time ticked on, Roncho and his demon army would crush the Free Empire, with their population soaring down at rates never before seen. For the first time in its entire existence, humanity had been wiped out. But not quite. Humanity had not been completely destroyed, as there were a few outposts of remaining humans who were barely able to escape the wrath of the demons and enclose themselves in a somewhat safe and peaceful society. These empires would not be completely safe from Poncho, but they would be so small and so out of Poncho's way that he wouldn't really bother going after them. They were as follows: the Hopeless Empire, the Remnant, and the Ruined Dynasty. Both the Ruined Dynasty and the Hopeless Empire came from two of the villages that were abandoned from the Free Empire, and the Remnant, as the name would suggest, was the last remaining piece of the once Free Empire. Several years had passed, and at this point, Roncho had successfully rebuilt his father's old castle. He and the demons held a massive party where they all celebrated the perceived death of humanity across the world. Lava refilled the world to lakes, and there was essentially no more sign of any green in the world, as it had entirely turned into hell. Back on the southern side, Roncho was in the process of completely surrounding Stephen's grave, but he was smart in not trying to destroy it, as that could potentially cause some issues. But regardless, one demon who was in the area, named Stuart, decided to walk down and check out the monument. Demons were not very smart creatures, but she had heard about Stephen Jr. and what they had done, but she didn't believe it. She thought she was smarter than that, so she decided to begin hacking the monument, picking at its heart. Eventually, after several hours of work, Stuart was able to successfully tarnish the grave and make it look unrecognizable. Stuart felt pretty proud of doing this, but it would end up being the worst mistake that she ever made, as a fiery nuke went off, killing Stuart immediately. Following the nuke were several powerful earthquakes, laying ruin to the newly made containment area for Stephen's grave. Roncho and his crew were so far off partying that they didn't even hear or recognize any of the sounds being made. But among the rubble lay a single faint figure in the background, and when he was zoomed in on and analyzed, it was determined that he was Stephen the Third.